Morning, guys. Morning to you. So it is around 8:30 a.m. I think. My kids have just gone to school. My wife's gone to school. She's a school teacher. I got my butter coffee, and I've made a couple of videos this morning. I've been up very early. I think I woke up around 5:45 a.m. I am an early riser. In case you're new to my channel, my name's Louis. I'm in the southwest UK. I'm 56, 57 in July the 10th. So the clock's ticking for my birthday. And I have always adored Elvis since I was around 4 years old. 100% an Elvis fan. I do try and keep my topics quite interesting, and Priscilla is quite a big topic in my live streams because I'm really trying to get to the truth of many things that have gone on since the day they met, and it's very complicated, and you fans are very passionate about Priscilla. So you will see Priscilla videos from me, but not because I'm a Priscilla fan, just because I think the topic needs to be looked at deeply, and I'll keep digging until I get to the truth. Anyway, this video, this live, is not about Priscilla. I've been looking into Larry Geller, so I wanted to do a live stream where we can learn about Larry Geller together. I'm not really sure how this video is going to pan out. I don't know a lot about Larry Geller other than they had a chance meeting back behind one of his concerts. Larry Geller just briefly spoke to Elvis, and then I think 8 or 9 years later, on the set of Roustabout, Elvis needed his haircut. I think 1964, and he was introduced to Larry Geller and started cutting Elvis's hair. So he's responsible for his haircuts from 64 onwards, I would say. And in the end, it wasn't just, how can I say it? In the end, Elvis actually employed Larry Geller as his full-time hairdresser. But what took a big twist, a big turn in their friendship, because they became good friends, was that Larry Geller was a very spiritual person, who really was also searching for the meaning of life and his inner voice. And Elvis found that fascinating, and Elvis wanted Larry to educate him, really, because Elvis at this point didn't know hardly anything about being a spiritual person. I'm not talking about religion here. I'm talking about your inner voice and that your true self, which can be quite deep and isn't for everyone, you know, the guru type stuff. And Larry was into that, which wasn't uncommon in '64, because obviously you've got the things that were exploding around the world then, with all the festivals as well. So Elvis looked to Larry Geller as his confidant and to help him understand his purpose, his meaning in life, through books. And Elvis really did get into this. And I could do many videos about Elvis's spiritual side. In fact, I have done some videos about Elvis's spiritual side. So anyway, I'm waffling. I just want to have a little look at Larry Geller, his life. He's still around. I think he could be 84 years old now. Larry always speaks very highly of Elvis. And I personally think that Larry has been one of the most genuine friends to Elvis, and was as well at the time. And since Elvis passed, his interviews have always been very good, very fair, very true, always speaks highly of Elvis. And you can tell that Larry Geller absolutely admired Elvis and thought Elvis was an amazing person through and through on so many levels, not just his music and his good looks, but in his heart. So I've always found Larry Geller very interesting. I know that some fans think he's a bit of a weirdo because he's so spiritual. And I know that he seriously fell out with the Memphis Mafia. They couldn't stand him. And some people say that the fact that Larry Geller helped get Elvis into the spiritual books and some very sort of, how can I say, not usual books that people wouldn't normally read. And they feel that this affected Elvis in a bad way and a good way. So people have views on these books that were introduced to Elvis via Larry Geller, but they really did become very close friends. So anyway, let's just see how it goes. Let's learn together, because I don't really know much about him, to be honest with you. I actually messaged him once, telling him that I felt that he was one of Elvis's true friends. I messaged him direct, not expecting a reply. And his reply to me, this is a few years ago, was, "This means everything to me." And I was actually really surprised that he replied. I wonder if let's see if I can find it. I sent it years ago, before I had a channel. Let's just see if it comes up. But if you're watching me, guys, please join in. Please message me. Here we go. So I messaged him in 2015. My God. Here's the message. I'm going to read it to you. "Hello, Larry. I just want you to know I think you are the most important thing that happened to Elvis. And what I meant at the time of writing this was that he was one of the very few people that spoke to Elvis and really tried to make him think about his purpose, his meaning, and really spoke honestly to Elvis. Because the problem is Elvis had a lot of yes people. You know, so everyone would agree with Elvis. Everyone would laugh at Elvis's jokes. People were too scared to stand up to Elvis and to disagree with Elvis. And I personally think that Larry was one of the few people that tried to make Elvis think about his actions, think about his life, think about his medication taking, think about his purpose and why he had these God-given gifts and these natural talents, and why he was so beautiful, why he was so loved. And I think Larry was important in this way. And the spiritual side of Elvis, I think Larry opened many doors for Elvis, so Elvis could literally research and understand more about life other than just having money, having women, being famous, being a good singer, making movies. So I'm very spiritual and have loved Elvis since I was 7. So I do have a spiritual side to me, but I'm also a religious person. I'm a Christian. He changed my life without ever knowing. And I've always said this to you guys. Elvis transformed my life because I had quite a tough childhood, and I would say quite downtrodden childhood. And I needed something to boost me up and make me think more of myself and make me believe in myself and bring myself out of myself. And I think discovering Elvis very young, around 4, is what really turned my whole life around for the better. So then I say, I feel his true essence every day. I don't even remember writing this. This is how long ago it was. And I do feel Elvis's essence every day. I really do feel that I'm touched by Elvis. And I've always known he was much more than just his body and his voice. And I really do believe that Elvis's spirit shines throughout the world. It touches everyone around the world. Elvis really did have this inner strength in him that wanted to do good for the world. He really did. And then I write, thank God he found you so the world can now know who he really was. And what I meant by that was Elvis was much more than just his music and his singing and how he looked and his success and his movies and his concerts. He was so much more than that. He really did change the world for the better. He really did do a lot of good for the world. And how many people do you know that if they earn millions and millions and millions of pounds, just want to give it all away? How many people that once they've got money will want to buy houses for people, cars for people, would want to give all their money to charity and help hundreds of charities? And Elvis would look for complete strangers to help them. He would get the local newspaper and read the newspaper looking who can I help? Who can I help? And I think Elvis actually felt guilty that he had so much money. Yes, he enjoyed his money and his success. He loved it. And he enjoyed the attention and he loved his fans. But it was more with Elvis. He wanted to help. He wanted to make a difference to people's lives. So then Larry just gives me a very short reply. It says, Louis, thank you for your very kind words. They mean everything to me. Let me just show you that. Let me just go a bit nearer. I don't know if you can read that. The lighting is not very good. So I'm gobsmacked that he replied, never knowing that I was ever going to do an Elvis channel. And then I just replied, thank you for your reply. You are a true friend to Elvis. Take care. I send you love. So I have, when I started my channel, so here it says January the 9th, 2023. Hello, you were kind enough to reply to me years ago. Here is my Elvis channel. I hope you are well. Take care. So I'm just letting him know. And then there is one video that I did. I sent Larry Geller that is called Elvis Presley, Colonel Tom Parker. And then I think we all know this part where Larry Geller talks about Colonel Tom Parker and basically how badly he treated Elvis. But also he talks about Colonel Tom Parker's crazy gambling habit where he would literally blow a fortune in the Vegas casinos every night. And Larry witnessed this. So I made a video about this and I sent it to Larry. So anyway, I just want to play a few clips. Then we're going to start looking him up. Please let me know what you think of Larry. Right, let's have a look. And I have posted a good video, I think, today about Larry Geller, a rare vintage interview. And I think you'll find it very interesting. And I think it'll take you back as well. So if you're from, if you grew up through the 60s and 70s and 80s, I think you'll like this because it's quite a rare vintage clip of Larry being interviewed. It's quite a long interview. And I think you'll find it interesting. So I did post another video to do with Red West. I'm also going to do a Red West video as well. Right, let me just quickly see if I can find this clip that I was up to this day. Let's have a look. Okie dokie.
What kind of a guy was Elvis?
Right. All right, are we ready, guys? Let me just turn it up.
I found this really great. What kind of a guy was Elvis? What kind of a person was Elvis? You know what I say? You really want to know what Elvis was like, the real Elvis? Because Elvis said, the world knows. They know Elvis Presley. They don't know me. They see the jumpsuit. They don't see where I'm at. They don't know where I'm coming from. They don't know how I want to help people, how I want to just send love to people. So, you really want to know Elvis? Forget the books. Forget all the books. Forget everyone who talks, me included. Listen to his music. Listen to his music. If you're in a bad mood, something's wrong, you need help, you want to be healed, you want to be soothed, you want to feel good, listen to that magical voice. That's the portal where it comes. So a lot of people think that Elvis is speaking just to them, directly just to you. He is speaking just to you. That's the magic. That's the trip. All he wanted to do is give love. He was so happy. The first time I met him, he said, you know, my mother's middle name is Love. Gladys Love Presley. And that's all Elvis was. He was a very simple, beautiful guy that was born a twinless twin that had an emptiness in him. And he wanted to share his love with the world. And something happened with that voice that reached into the very heart and soul of humanity, and he squeezed our hearts gently, just a little bit, just enough. What kind of a guy was Elvis?
Well,
what kind of a person was?
Beautiful, touching words there. I'm going to play some more clips, but he says it all just in that clip, which is probably only a minute long. He just says it all, doesn't he? He hits the nail on the head. He describes Elvis so well. And isn't he right? If anything you ever need to know about Elvis is in the tone of his voice and in his beautiful songs. And Elvis can help us through any bad time by just sitting down and listening to his music and really absorbing it. And I agree with that. And I expect you guys do out there as well. So I'm going to just do a bit of research first, and then I'll find some more clips. And I'll show you some pictures as well. There isn't actually that many pictures of Larry Geller with Elvis. There's one here. I think the Colonel Tom Parker is actually in this picture, but he's been chopped out of it. And that's obviously in the 60s. Let's have a look. Another one there. I was looking, I couldn't find hardly anything. There's one showing them on holiday. I'm guessing in Hawaii. This is quite a later picture. I know you can't see them very well, guys, but I'm just showing you a few. And really, look, here's the picture again, but this time showing Colonel Tom Parker. But there isn't much more. You see him, like he's out and about. He's about to get into the car there. Larry stood next to him. And a bit of the backstory that I learnt with Larry was that he was a bit lost, didn't really know what he was going to do as career. And I think a friend of his said to him, look, that in those days, there were no men's barbers, no men's hair, like proper hair salons. Yeah. You had the basic barbers, but not the salons where they washed your hair and all the rest of it. And so they set up a salon. This is just going from memory now. I don't remember where it was. Could be California. I'm not sure. But it was a massive success. It was the first proper men's hairdressing salon. And all the celebrities started going there, including people like Frank Sinatra. And I think, from what I know, I think that Larry Geller was recommended to Elvis by other celebrities. But I don't know this. This is just something from memory. So let's have a look. So I'm just going to go, who is Larry Geller? And then we'll see what comes up. I don't know what's going to come up. We're going to learn together, guys, because I'm a newbie Elvis fan in the way of my channel. Obviously, I've been an Elvis fan for, 50 years, but over 50 years. But with a channel, I'm a newbie. Right. So let's have a look. Go. Let's see what is said. Right. Larry Geller is an American writer, hairstylist, and public speaker. He was a spiritual advisor and personal hairstylist to Elvis Presley. Okay. Right, so we're going to go to Wikipedia. I don't know what it's going to say, but first of all, he's 84 years old. He was born August 8th, 1939. Again, he's known as a writer, a speaker, a former hairstylist. Let's have a look. It says health and spirituality are his favorite things. And so I think he was married to someone called Stevie. Is that someone famous? I don't know. You have to let me know. Actually, I'll look it up. And then eventually he was married to her from 1963 to 1972. And then eventually remarried to not remarried. They must have split up. And then he married Shira. Right, I just want to quickly look up Stevie, just to see who that is. Do any of you guys know? Right, Larry TV. So that does ring a bell. Right. Is it coming up? No, it's not coming out. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll start reading through these things. And then we'll see if the information comes up about Stevie. So let's have a look here. Prior to meeting Elvis Presley, Larry Geller worked on the J. Sebring, one of the top men's hairstylists. Yeah, this is the one I was trying to remember. And cultural innovators in the US. Together, they opened the very first styling salon for men in the country. So it was called J. Sebring. Right, okay. Together, they opened the very first styling salon for men in the country. Some of their clients included Frank Sinatra, Paul Newman, Steve McQueen, Peter Sellers, Roy Orbison, Sam Cooke, Marlon Brando. They worked with many of the top celebrities. Wow, that's just amazing. You imagine cutting their hair. So he literally came from nothing, was looking for a career. Someone recommended be a hairdresser, and he ends up cutting hair for all these amazing celebrities and becoming Elvis Presley's best friend. You couldn't even make that up, could you? On April the 30th, 1964, Larry received a phone call that would change his life. He was invited to the home of Elvis Presley. After styling Elvis's hair for the first time, Larry and Elvis spent several hours discussing everything from show business to the nature of life. And I think many of us Elvis fans, we know this story. He went there to cut his hair. And they hit it off, and Elvis wanted to know more because Larry brought up spirituality and these books, and Elvis was like, right, you're staying here, we're going to talk about this. And they ended up speaking for hours on their first meeting. Larry and Elvis became quick friends, exploring together the great spiritual and philosophical teachings of the East and the West. Larry remained Elvis's personal hairstylist and working on 10 Elvis Presley movies, hundreds of concert appearances across the country. He had the terrible task of preparing Elvis's hair for his funeral in 1977. And there's an interview out there. It might be the postman. 1 second. I'll just use that as an opportunity to warm my coffee as well. Right, hang on. The dogs are awake. Let me just warm this coffee up. Right, it's okay. Shh. It's all right. Smack off. On you go. It's fine. All right. Quiet. Shh. Now, don't worry. My dogs don't like postmen. Ella actually attacks the postman. Is he gone? Yes. Okay, guys, sorry about the interruption. Gives me a chance to warm my coffee up. Right, where were we? Okay, we're learning about Larry Geller. Okay. Larry Geller's unique relationship with Elvis Presley had been the subject of books, television, and radio interviews, and a variety of newspapers and magazine articles, and a number of documentaries. So you imagine Larry becoming best friends with Elvis, and Elvis employed him as his full-time hairdresser, and then accompanying him and doing his hair through 10 of his movies and all through his concerts in the 70s. How lucky is Larry to have been that close to Elvis, that close where he touched him. And I think we know the story that Larry Geller prepared his hair for his burial. And there's another story that I've seen in interviews where Larry Geller just touched him for the last time. And Larry Geller supposedly was the last person to ever touch him. I think he touched him on the forehead for the last time before they closed the casket. So very interesting. Right. let's have a look. In addition to entertainment celebrities, Larry has known leaders in the field of health and healing, including pioneers like Gypsy Boots, Jack LaLanne. Larry and his wife Shira often travel to Graceland and other places around the world where Larry is featured at speaking events and commemorative Elvis Presley. So, I mean, that he is interesting. I'll give you that. He does have, how can I say it nicely, an interesting personality. He's definitely very unique. And I would say he's not for everyone. Some people, you know, I think he's one of these you like him or don't like him type people. I like him. I personally think he's very interesting, very genuine, and he had a true love for Elvis. And I think he's one of the most genuine people that Elvis ever met. I really believe that. Larry Geller is an author of 2 books, If I Can Dream, 1989, and Leaves of Elvis Garden in 2008, I think. So he's still writing more books. And Larry is developing a holistic, natural, organic hair and beauty care system to be launched in 2017. So I'm guessing this is a bit old. So he had a first meeting with Elvis at the back of one of his concerts in 1957, just as a fan. And then they met again in 1964. Okay, right. So now let's go back to the Wikipedia. Let's see what that was going to say. Is it going to come up again or have I lost it? All right, there we are. Let's have a look at this. So, okay, we're going to read part of an interview. Let's see how long this is. Okay, and it comes from Elvis Information Network. I'll show you that. Elvis Information Network. I don't know if that, it's not clear, is it? It's never going to be clear. Right, and this is part 1, the Larry Geller interview. Let's start with the first question. I'm going to try and skip through it. I don't want to bore you guys. I've got my coffee though, which always helps. When did you meet Elvis for the first time? The first time I really met Elvis was a little kid at a concert in LA, Pan Pacific Auditorium concert. However, 8 years later, I was cutting the hair of Johnny Rivers when my phone rings and it's a person who worked for Elvis by the name of Alan Fortas. Do any of you know who that is? Alan says Elvis would love you to come to the house and cut his hair. Would you like to come up? So I say, great. At the time, I was working on a lot of luminaries in Hollywood like Peter Sellers, Sam Cooke, Steve McQueen, amongst others. I heard that I was going to do Elvis's hair. I got a little bit nervous. Not surprised. Right. How did you and Elvis end up getting your number in the first place? Okay, well, that's interesting. You're right. Right, let's have a look. I was doing very well with my job. I was only 24, yet it was no big deal if we went over to Frank Sinatra's house, for instance. But the thought of meeting Elvis, that was over the top for me. He was the man, he was the king, he was the legend. And I drove up to Bel Air, the Perugia Way house. So obviously he had a house in Perugia Way house. And you could tell which one it was because there were tons of people outside. That's very understandable. As I drove through the gates, girls were screaming, "Tell Elvis I'm here. Tell Elvis I love him." And I'm thinking, wow, this is something else. I went into the house. Elvis walked up to me and says, "Hi, I'm Elvis Presley." And I put my hand out and say, "Hi, I'm Larry Geller." Elvis was about 5'11" and a half tall, and I'm 6'2", and I have a deja vu of 8 years earlier when I was a kid looking up at the same man, and I saw him in the car park. I shook his hand and he says, "Let's go into the bathroom. You can do my hair and we can talk." We walked into the bathroom. I expected to see all Hollywood tappings and salon chairs and everything else, but there was nothing. Elvis says, "Come on, we'll do it right here," and just puts his head in the basin. I start to shampoo his hair, and as I'm rinsing the suds from his hair, He rears his head up and starts shaking. Water is flying and splattering everywhere. Over me, over him. He looks at me with that Elvis smile, that grin, and he says, "Hey man, what the hell? At least it's clean." When he sat that I thought what this is a bit when he said that I thought what a down-to-earth guy Elvis was, I just knew right away that he was a real and he wasn't a fake. Okay, let's have a look. So how did Elvis find out about your interests? Did he ask you? So this is obviously the spiritual stuff and the books that Larry was into. Well, it took about 45 minutes to finish his hair, and the whole time Elvis didn't say a word, but his eyes would follow me every move I made. I was working with people like Warren Beatty, Paul Newman, and the most handsome guys of the movies. I can tell you no one looked like Elvis. Which is true, guys. He was the best looking man ever on the planet. Elvis eclipsed them all. He had the face, the voice, the career, the fans, the fame, the money. He had the hair. His hair was unbelievable to work on. Once I'd finished and sprayed it and asked him, "So what do you think, Elvis?" Elvis looks and says, yeah, great. But I want to ask you a question, Larry. What are you really into? What are you really all about? I thought to myself, wow, this guy didn't say a word, and now he's getting really personal. Now that's interesting. Imagine Elvis asking you that. If someone said to me, "What are you really into?" I'd probably say Elvis. I don't know what else I'd say. I do like a bit of business because I've run businesses through my life, and I'm into dieting and health and the correct way to eat. But that's about it. And obviously my family. So I tell him the truth about my interests, and this way, before the Beatles explosion and the Maharishi stuff became popular. So I told him how I worked as a hairdresser, as a living, but the more importantly, my search for the truth, for the purpose of life, for God. I said, "I know you're Elvis Presley. I'm the biggest star in the world, and what I'm saying probably sounds very corny to you." But Elvis replies, "No, wait a minute, Larry. You have no idea. I need to hear what you have to say. Please keep talking." So this is a famous thing that Elvis said to Larry and sparked their friendship. And I do think Elvis was at a point in his life then where he was looking for answers. Obviously, he was having this phenomenal success in his music and movies, and definitely the most famous man on the planet. But I personally think Elvis didn't know what to do with it. It was like, right, I've got all this. Where do I go from here? That's my opinion. So I tell him about my mediation, yoga, my spiritual books, my being vegetarian, everything right way. He wanted to know about my soul. Do you have a soul? Where do we come from? Do we survive this life? All these things just emerged into a conversation. Well, it's true. We all want to know what happens to us after we pass away. Do we have a soul? I definitely believe that I have a soul, 100%. I definitely believe that we are more than our bodies. So what do you guys believe? Let me know. And during all this, you are still in Elvis's bathroom. Well, before I know it, it's an hour later and Elvis is talking to me, and I look in the mirror and he has tears rolling down his cheeks. He's talking about his mother and how poor they were and how she slaved for her life away, how they didn't have running water in the house. But as well out of his back, he talked about his stillborn brother Jesse and about growing up in the church. We got into some major stuff, and we had been talking about 3 hours. I'm a twin as well, so I relate to the twin thing. All of a sudden, there was a knock at the door, and this is so ironic that I'll never forget it. One of the guys said, "Hey, boss, you all right in there?" Elvis replied, "Sure, man, of course I'm all right. What the hell do you think is going to happen to me in my own bathroom?" Of course, that was where it all ended. So how ironic is that? Right. 2 weeks earlier, Peter Sellers had asked me to go back to England with him and work with him on his new film. It was a change of a country, and although I did like Peter, it was a long way to go. I said I would have to think about it. But when Elvis said to me, go back to your shop, tell them you've quit and work for me full time, what do you think? I didn't have to wait a nanosecond. I just said yes. It was the situation that clicked and I knew it was right for me. Fair comment. And if Elvis offered you a job, would you drop everything? I expect you would, guys. Okay, let's keep going. Very interesting, actually. Did you feel the same about any other celebrities who you work for? You know, I've been cutting celebrities' hair every day, but the only other one I had connected with spiritually was Sam Cooke, and we all love Sam Cooke, don't we? Sam was a very down-to-earth guy, very sensitive. He had lost his son. His son had died as he was going through a lot, and he was a major star. He was setting music on fire. He was probably the biggest black artist at the time. I actually gave him some books on yoga. That's interesting. So after saying yes to Elvis, did you start working for him on Roustabout immediately? Elvis told me to be at the Paramount Studios the next day at 8 o'clock. So the next day I went down to Paramount and did his hair. It was so incredible because at the end of the day, we all walked out to where the cars were parked and Elvis was sitting in his Rolls Royce just bought. He said to me, hey, Larry, I just got the Rolls. Do you want to borrow it tonight? Come over to the house, pick it up and take your wife out for a ride in it. And that's just amazing. Just like that. But, you know, I felt a little funny. So I said, no, that's okay, I said. I just couldn't believe in the generosity Elvis was there. That's interesting. Elvis, 15-year-old Elvis died, play music every day. Nigel, how are you? I hope you're well. I'm Louis. Nice to meet you. What country are you in? Right, let's have a keep going. He just loved to give, didn't he? If you met Elvis tonight, he would have given you a watch, a bracelet or something. That's the way he was, just most extraordinary giving person. He genuinely loved making people happy and sharing. And we all know that, guys. Have you read the new Alana Nash book about the Colonel? Did you suspect this stuff all along? Right, okay, I don't know about this book. You must read the new book. It will open your eyes. It's very truthful. I knew the Colonel and the type of character he was and how bombastic he was. He was a real con man who used power to get what he wanted. He had iced water running through his veins. You can tell he didn't like him. It's a great book, but but it's no revelation to me. I gave the author Alana Nash all the information. I knew she's a truthful journalist. In the last couple of years, I remember saying, I want to go to Europe on tour and see the world. I've got fans in Europe, in Germany and in Japan. The Beatles come here. The Stones come here. What about me? He even said to me that he thought there was something fishy going on, but I couldn't put his finger on it. Elvis said that whenever he asked what was happening, the Colonel would say he was working on it. But now we know. Yeah. So obviously Elvis wanted to travel the world. It was never meant to be. A lot of people put it down to the Colonel's nationality and that he didn't have a proper passport. And he was living under a fake name. And there's also the story that he was involved in a murder, which that's for another video. Right, let's keep going. You were there for some extraordinary important dates. For instance, the mid-60s, when Elvis must have needed something apart from his bad movies, and you brought to him some spiritual interest. I don't think all of Elvis's movies were bad. I liked a few of them. King Creole's my favorite, but I liked a few of them. But I will say this, as a small child, you know, from the ages of about 8 or 9 till about 12 or 13, I loved all of Elvis's films. I couldn't wait to watch them. They stood out of the screen. And as corny as some of them were, I loved seeing Elvis. I just wanted to watch Elvis. I didn't care what the storyline was. Didn't care how cheesy the film was. I just wanted to watch Elvis. Is that how you felt, guys, when you were a child, when you were a teenager? Yes, now as a grown man, I can watch some of the films and laugh at how bad the storylines were and how corny and cheesy they were. But I still love the music in them. And I still love watching him. Do I think Elvis could have been a very credible, decent actor? 100%. You watch Elvis in King Creole, and you know he's got what it takes to be a good actor. Right, so let's have a look. Elvis and I would spend a couple of hours together alone talking, and it went on for years. Elvis and Priscilla in her book points out that he would run off. She was jealous as neither she nor the guys knew what we were talking about. Okay, so Priscilla was jealous of their closeness. How is your relationship when you see Priscilla now? That's an interesting question. I have run into her a few times and it's very service, and we hug and we do the hi thing. How are you? But we're not buddies, you know. I found out recently that she was doing some wonderful charity work, which is great. God bless her. Okay, fair enough. One thing I never understood was how Elvis worked on his meditation and going to the self-realization fellowship within the movie schedule. Did he go there when there were breaks between the films, or did he come home every night and say, Larry, this movie is a pile of blah, blah, let's go meditate? We'd be out there in Hollywood for a pre-production for a week or two before shooting started. So we'd go out to visit the Diamata, and I've done videos on the Diamata. Elvis became very close to Diamata and would visit her regularly. Right, let's have a look. At 10 o'clock at night, perhaps we go on a Saturday or during the week to the self-realization part out at the beach. It would be no problem. No one would ever hassle him. They respected the place and spiritual environment. There were his designs of the Graceland Meditation Garden that came from. Yeah, so the meditation garden was basically based on his spiritual interest and meeting Diamata. And that's interesting to know. Because I think where the spiritual garden is now used to be a meeting area for Elvis and friends. Let's have a look. There was his design of the Graceland Meditation Garden came from. Elvis and I designed the whole thing along with Marty Lacker, by the way. In the final years, he's meditated every night, and before each show, I give him a little spiritual healing. So I recommend meditation. It's not something I'm into, but I have done it. And sometimes you just got to calm yourself and breathe deeply and just listen to how you feel. And I do think it can be very soothing. It's not really my thing, but I've tried it. The Colonel has set up a meeting between Elvis and the Beatles beforehand. Elvis and I were in the bathroom and I was doing his hair. Elvis was very quiet and drumming his fingers on the ledge. He looked up at me and said, man, I know that those guys are going through. I've been there. I've done it. So he's talking about the Beatles. They're playing a big audience and I'm doing these bad teenage movies. I'm so embarrassed. Elvis looked so phenomenal that night. He used to wear the bolero shirts and have them in colors except brown. In all colors except brown. He hated brown. He wearing a blue shirt that night. We all went to the den and all of a sudden we heard screaming like thunder if a bomb went off. The front door opened outside and there were thousands of fans everywhere. The word had got out. So the Beatles have obviously turned up. I would love to meet the Beatles. I love the Beatles. I've always loved the Beatles since I was a small child. Obviously not as much as Elvis. Elvis has always been my favorite. The Beatles walked in. The Beatles came in with Brian Epstein, their manager. They walked up to Elvis and introduced, and Elvis sit down on the chair. The Beatles all sit down on the floor right in front of Elvis in a semicircle, and they look up and they are gasping and staring at him. This dead silence in the room until Elvis says, well, what the hell, if you guys aren't going to talk to me, I'm going to my bedroom. And then everyone started to laugh, and that broke the ice. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know about them sitting around in a circle in front of him. I remember them looking at Elvis and TV and saying, wow, look, color television, because they'd never seen a color TV before. After that, Ringo and Billy Smith and Marty and Richard all went off and played pool in the pool room. And I heard that they had a bit of a smoke. Obviously, the Beatles were into their smoke. I know George Harrison liked the smoke as well, didn't he? Right, here's a good question. What about the Beatles' famous jam session? Right, that's it. Paul McCartney and John Lennon and myself and possibly Jerry Schilling were sitting around all talking when Paul asked Elvis if he could try one of Elvis's guitars. Elvis says, sure, man, go right ahead. So Paul picks up one and starts strumming, followed by John and Elvis too. So the three of them start jamming for about 20 minutes, I think. This is unbelievable. I'm in the center of the universe right now, the Beatles and Elvis. Wow, wouldn't we have loved to have got that on film or at least some pictures of it? The real trip was that Colonel Tom Parker was such a control freak that he wouldn't even allow a picture to be taken of Elvis and the Beatles together. That's just crazy. Crazy. How ridiculous is that? Now, at a certain point, I wondered where George had got. So I walked outside where it was pitch black. The minute I went out, I knew he was there because I could smell some reefer, some pot. So there's George Harrison sitting there by a tree smoking a joint. I sat around and chatted to him for a while. We had a great talk because I knew that George was into Hindu stuff and later became very close to Sri Daya Mata as well. We had a real spiritual connection. I was so sad when he died last year. Yeah, it was sad. Very sad. I really like George Harrison. Have you seen those very poor amateur photos of that night? Right. Yes, I know them. Elvis appeared and said, hey, you guys, I want to show you something first. We went outside to look at the new Rolls Royce. It was mayhem with the crowd screaming both, I love you, Elvis. I love you, the Beatles. Could you imagine, guys? And remember, some teenager girls had climbed high into the trees and used their flash cameras. I think that this is where the two bad photos of one night came from. Okay, so I haven't seen those photos. Actually, no, I may have seen, isn't this where they're walking to the car? I think I might have seen these photos. I'll look it up in a minute. Right, I want to finish reading this first. Next, Elvis took them to see the new present from Colonel Tom Parker, which was a new sauna bath in Elvis's bathroom, just off Elvis's bathroom. Paul looked in to check out the mirror and said to Elvis, who's that there? Elvis didn't know. And when we all looked in, we found the teenage girl who was hiding under the little wooden bench. She had somehow got by the security. When she saw us, she screamed and jumped on Elvis, and he had to pry her off her. I didn't know that. So basically, at the time Elvis met the Beatles, a girl had managed to sneak into his bathroom and jumped on him. That is funny. Right, let's keep going. After the Beatles left, Elvis had said goodbye. I walked back towards his bedroom and he said, I really like those guys. They are really good guys. But what's going on with their teeth? And of course, because of post-war shortages in England, there was a lack of good food and the teeth were bad. Anyway, Elvis said, I don't get, they have money. Why don't they get their teeth fixed? Just as we headed for bed, Elvis said, I just remember, Larry, there are 4 of them there and it's only one for me. Did you get to see the Beatles? Well, all of the Beatles, Elvis definitely liked John Lennon the most. For a few days afterwards, John phoned up several times wanting us to go over and party with them. However, the guys all went for the next 3 to 4 nights, but Elvis wouldn't go. The other guys had a great time, but I ended up staying and Elvis to keep him company. Oh, and I wonder why that was. Elvis didn't want to mix with the Beatles. I know that the Memphis Mafia were going around there because I've seen interviews saying that. So that's interesting. Right. I hope I'm not boring you guys. I find this very interesting. I hope I'm not boring you. If you're just joining my live stream here, I know a lot of you guys watch it later on because there's different time zones. Good morning to you. Right. There's obviously must have been bad tension at the time between you and the other members of the Memphis Mafia because of your different backgrounds. It also seems that you're often missing from recent documentaries about Elvis, possibly because Joe Esposito is control. How did you deal with the resentment? And I agree that it's pretty obvious the Memphis Mafia didn't like Larry Geller and felt he was a bad influence on Elvis. Right, you got it. That's the way it is. Well, the point is, I was there because what I did for a living, but more importantly, I was there because of Elvis, because I liked him. He's a guy who was so open, so receptive, and he was interested in what I had. So it was a perfect combination. We were both very numerology, into numerology, and I've done a video on this. Elvis was into numerology, and there's a certain numerology book that Elvis learned, and he was an 8 because he was born January the 8th. And that was the number which represented being misunderstood. And Elvis felt that he was very misunderstood. I agree, guys. I agree. If you just see the singer and his good looks, you don't know Elvis. I agree with that. He was so much more here. He was so deep and so intelligent as well. Elvis was totally aware of all the jealousy and the resentment within the group, that he felt that we were for a large purpose. That's what our friendship was based on. But it was very difficult to the outside world. I was part of the Memphis Mafia, but within the group, there were little cliques that hated each other, and they still exist to this day. I had Elvis's ear, and they didn't like that. They just didn't know that what I were talking about over the years. And to be honest with you, there's many, I think even now, people think that guru and meditation and spiritual stuff, is odd, yeah. And I think you can only really speak to people about spiritual stuff and meditation and that kind of stuff if they're into it. If they're not into it, you're wasting your time. I really believe that. I'm not talking about religion now. I'm talking about the true self, the voice within, that kind of stuff. Right. In terms of Elvis's vision for his future, the people around Elvis didn't know about it except Charlie Hodge. Charlie was aware of it because he was privy to some very, very important discussions that took place during the last couple of years of Elvis's life. After a concert, the guys would go up to the bar and pick up the chicks, and I would go and hang out with Elvis. That was why I was there. I wanted to be with Elvis, yeah. Charlie seems to be one of Elvis's closest friends. Charlie was a very nice and honest guy. Billy was always there. I always had a sense of mission, so I felt I could really stick with Elvis through the rougher periods. Though to this day, even with those who had resentment and who I didn't get along with, I don't care, because we had a bond, because we shared something that was so unique and so profound. I can look over the stuff, what I wouldn't do to sit with him for 10 minutes right now. That's it, guys. So I really enjoyed that. And you can tell that he felt very lucky to have spent those years with Elvis. And I think a lot of the Memphis Mafia feel that way now. I mean, they've all passed now, haven't they? But you look at the Memphis Mafia interviews, no matter what they say about Elvis, and it's usually good stuff, but not always. They do say things I think they should keep to themselves. Should have been kept private. But I will say this, they definitely loved Elvis. They made a massive mistake writing that book. But I think a lot of them regretted writing that book. And I think the excuse that was made that they wrote the book to help Elvis come off the drugs, I don't believe it, to be honest with you. I think there was some anger, some resentment, some jealousy, some bitterness. But I do think they loved Elvis. And I know they had it in for Larry Geller, and because of it, there was a period that Larry Geller just disappeared for a few years, but then came back on the scene later on. Right, let's see what else we can read here. Personal life. So I'd like to know if it mentions who Stevie is. No? Let's have a look. No, it mentions the books that he wrote. Right, let's try and go a different way. Okay, so we're coming to the end of this live now, guys. I tend to end them around an hour. Just want to do a little bit more. I'm going to do another live about Red West, and I'm also going to do another live concerning the Priscilla Presley saga the fan reaction to and the comments that are in my live streams that I was getting yesterday, and I've had loads. So, but today, at the moment, I'm sticking to Red West and Larry Geller. Let's just see if I can get a bit more information and then we'll call it a day. Let's have a look. I hope you enjoyed that. I actually found that interview really interesting. Right. There's a Daily Mail. Elvis Presley dyed his locks black every 3 weeks and had mascara applied to touch up his roots for his funeral. Personal hairdresser reveals what would have been the King's 89th birthday. Larry Geller was Elvis Presley's personal hairstylist and spent 2 hours a day with the King of Rock and Roll from 1964 until his dying day, August 16th, 1977. In an exclusive interview with the Daily Mail, Larry Geller said he spent his final birthday with him when the singer was very positive about the coming year. Yeah, and I've seen this in interviews because people try and paint Elvis that in those last few months before he died, like he was really depressed and hated life and just didn't want to be alive. But if you listen to a few interviews, Larry Geller's one of them, and also Ginger Alden, he was very upbeat and looking forward to the future and looking forward to the concert that was starting the next day, the day after he passed. And he had lost weight, and I think he had started to get a little bit better in his health, and he was quite optimistic. And Ginger Alden says he was fun to be with and enjoying life and liked having just basically, he wasn't this miserable man lying in bed depressed in his bedroom. He wasn't like that. This is what I've heard. Right, let's have a look. He was going to make a lot of changes. He was going to quit touring and get out of show business for a while. And he needed a break, didn't he, guys? Larry knows a thing or two about Elvis. The 84-year-old writer was one of the singer's best friends and closest confidants going back to 1964. Yeah. So I think I don't want to read stuff that I've already read. There's a picture of them together. Let's have a look. Elvis was in Palm Springs at his home for a bunch of the guys, and it was his birthday. There were some of the girlfriends and a couple of wives. Elvis and I went into the bedroom for me to do his hair, Geller recorded. He looked beautiful. He really did. He had black suit on and blue suit on. He said to me, "You know, this is my birthday, and on your birthday, you get to do what you want." So he goes to his dresser, and there's a big stack of hundreds of dollar bills, brand new crisp. He goes into the room, he takes a book with him, and he says to all the guys, "Listen, you guys, I want to talk to the girls alone." He gave them all $100 bills, more than one each. He said, "I'm going to have Robinson department store open tonight. You go there and get whatever you want." Oh, that's nice. But before the shopping excursion, Elvis read passages from the book The Prophet by Khalil Gibran to the woman for 30 to 40 minutes. And isn't this in the Priscilla film? Which is not good, by the way, guys, but it was in there, wasn't it? Elvis became a voracious reader. With Geller amassed a spiritual library. Geller had written 2 books about his friend, If I Can Dream, and released, you can get them on Amazon, and the other one was called The Leaves of Elvis. Let's keep going. I think we've really covered all this. All right, he did Henry Fonda's hair and Roy Orbison's hair. That's interesting. He was heavily into yoga and meditation. We know that. He was a vegetarian. Right, I just want to try and find bits that I haven't read to you yet. When I was running out the door, the receptionist said, "Peter Sellers is on the phone. He wants you right now." I think this is when Peter Sellers offered him a job. There's a rare picture here. I don't think you can see that. So let's just keep looking. He was a seeker, a learner. He said to me, "Why was I plucked out of the millions and millions of lives to become Elvis Presley? There's got to be a reason." I'm going to say that again. Elvis said, "Why was I plucked out of the millions and millions of lives to become Elvis? That's got to be a reason. There's got to be a reason." And I think I would feel the same way. After you know, you got the massive fame and success and the money and the houses and the cars and the women and being adored wherever you go. And once you've enjoyed that, you know, obviously Elvis loved being famous. Elvis loved being Elvis Presley. He loved the attention. But eventually, when he got used to it, he wanted to know why. Why me? Was there a reason? Was I picked? Is there something I have to do? Should I be helping the world? Should I be trying to change the world? Should I be trying to make a difference? I really believe that that's where Elvis was. And I think once Elvis reached that juncture in his life, everything got very, very complicated, because then he would spend years searching, looking, reading, trying to find out why, meditating. And I really do think right to the day Elvis passed, he was trying to understand why Elvis, why me. I really believe that. And I don't think he ever found the answers he wanted, ever. But I also know that Christianity and his love of the Bible and his love of Jesus and God and the teachings in the Bible stayed with him right till the end, because he was a true Christian, Elvis. Right, let's have a look. Yeah, so I've read a lot of this. So I think we're going to call it a day, guys. So I've enjoyed learning with you about Larry Geller. Please let me know your views about Larry Geller. He's still around doing his thing. He's very elderly now. And I personally have a lot of time for Larry Geller. I'd love to meet him and talk to him and ask him questions. There's many, many interviews on YouTube with Larry Geller, literally hundreds. And I just think he had a lovely effect on Elvis. And I feel sorry that he got picked on, really, by the Memphis Mafia, and that he lost his friend at 42 years old. So sad. And that, just imagine having to get Elvis ready for his casket and doing his hair, giving Elvis his last haircut. And I know in the interview he said that Elvis's hair had become very white and silvery, and that he had to blacken his hair in the casket. And he's proud of his story where he feels he was the last person that ever touched Elvis by touching his forehead just before they closed the casket. So anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this. It's been very interesting. And I'm going to do another one, another live stream with Red West. I do find the live streams are more enjoyable. I'll be honest with you, I am not a massive fan of editing. It takes so long. Sometimes you can spend 8-9 hours editing just one video, which I find frustrating. So I have reduced the amount of videos I'm making, but I did make 2 today, this morning. And I'm going to try and make 1 or 2 every other day. But I am concentrating on my live streams. I'm enjoying them more, and I love interacting with you guys. So please leave comments for me. Thanks for listening to me. I hope you're enjoying it. I really want your comments. Please leave your comments, because I am learning with you guys. Have a great day. All the best to you.